Major League Journeymen back in the house. Welcome in all to the latest installment of Alan Gordon's Hot Takes and Dax's Refutes. This is the best banter that you'll find this week or whenever we put it out. But either way, it's coming to you and it's coming to you hot. We are talking about Major League Soccer today, but we got a couple topics that I think are maybe a little bit on the press, shall we say. It is top of mind. There's a couple different things that are going on. But, of course, the press rocket juggernaut that is Lionel Messi is top of mind. And I wanted to throw this straight to you, Alan Gordon, for the freshest hot take of the day. Is Inter Miami's season a success or not today?
Absolutely.
Absolutely a success?
Absolutely a success. Yeah.
Okay. And I want you to take it one step further and tell me why them finishing next to last in the Eastern Conference can be considered a success.
I mean, guards, they were worst team in the league before they signed these guys. And
they finished what, next to worst team in the league.
They had what, 10 games left after Leagues Cup and then Open Cup, right? Mm-hmm. They win Leagues Cup, which was a tremendous feat. I mean, we talked about this. There hasn't been a buzz like that, and it wasn't just about Miami, but obviously they got Messi. But we liked following Nashville and everything it had to do. But Miami, Messi comes in, he lights the place on fire. It was really fun to watch. Dax battles them in the final. It was super fun. He comes up short, but it was really entertaining. They won a trophy. If we're talking about successful seasons, you got to it's winning a trophy, right? And then prior.
But we've also refuted that in the past. As in, let's talk about DC United. DC United won what did they win? They won the Open Cup under Ben, and I think finished in dead last in the standings.
Okay, yeah, I get you, but here's what I'm saying. If I'm gonna cut it, black and white.
Yep, cut and dry. Give it to me.
Cut and dry. Yeah, what happens before Messi gets there doesn't matter. It never existed. That every game they lost and played before Messi got here, before League Cup, it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, okay? So it's BC and AD is what we're talking about.
Exactly. You said it perfect. And then everything after was a huge success. It sucks that Messi got injured and Jordi Alba gets injured too. Obviously, they have some work to do because you can't depend on it. It's incredible to see the difference in teams when those two are involved, even with Busquets. And Busquets doesn't look half as good as he does when he's got Messi the past two either. So they got a lot of work to do for next year because they can't be that reliant on one player. It is Messi and all that stuff, but huge success, man. I mean, they put it on the map. They won a trophy. He gets injured. It was like when Bruce took over the U.S. team to try to make the World Cup. It was going to be a huge.
It's a losing proposition to start with. Is that what you're saying?
And that wasn't the point. They were already out of it. They were the last team, worst team in the league, and so that's my take. It's BC versus AD, and in my opinion, it's a huge success.
Dax, what do you got?
God, I hate. First of all, I hate agreeing with Gordo, but I especially hate agreeing with Gordo when he's got as much gel in his hair as he has right now. That makes it even worse.
Fresh out of the salon. Definitely not the barbershop.
So much gel in that
Went
hair,
to the salon today.
It hurts to agree with him, but I'll take some quotes that I saw from Tata Martino, and I'll take his word for it because I think he's a great coach. And
I agree.
I think that the gist of what he said was that we can't look at this season as anything other than an unmitigated success because Tata's plan going into this job and into this season was essentially to just try to implement his style and get everyone caught up to speed with how you can play with Messi and Busquets. And he said anything else, any other success would have been fantastic, but it was all prep for the next 2 years. And so I look at what their plan was like this. If they probably assumed that because Messi and Busquets and Jordi Alba weren't integrated in the team, that Leagues Cup would be short-lived, right? They would play in Leagues Cup. They would go for the U.S. Open Cup because they were already in the semifinals before Messi and Busquets even got there. So my thought was, if I'm Tata and Inter Miami, I'm thinking Leagues Cup off to the side. We're probably going to lose. Let's go for the Open Cup and let's go with all we can to make the playoffs. Once they made that crazy run in Leagues Cup and actually won a trophy, I think their priorities changed. And I think that as soon as Messi came back from international duty and they knew he was nursing a little bit of an injury, I think that the entire premise of even getting into the playoffs went
out the window.
Totally out the window, totally secondary. Because guess what? Making the playoffs and making a deep run to win MLS Cup or win the Open Cup, that comes with a CONCACAF Champions Cup place. They got that already with Leagues Cup, right? So they got what they wanted. They won a trophy. They got into CONCACAF Champions Cup. So then everything else becomes a little bit secondary, right? There's no question they wanted to win the Open Cup, but that became a little bit of a question mark as soon as Messi gets injured. And so for me, I think that they're going to look at this season as an unmitigated success, even if the expectations probably should and could be higher. With Messi's injury, that definitely resets things a little bit because Gordo touched on it a little bit. They're not the same team when he's not on the field. I think that's obvious. That's not any sort of novel concept. I mean, he's the best player in the world and still one of the best players in the world. So I look at their season and I think that they reprioritized everything after they won Leagues Cup. They got the trophy that that got them into CONCACAF Champions Cup. They have a little bit. It's a little bit of lightning in the bottle that they caught, right? Like, they got kind of lucky in penalties and they played at home a lot. But regardless, I think proof of concept, proof that they can build this team around aging superstars is there, right? As long as they let Tata do what he does and put a lot of young players around him. So I think they'll be happy with the season. And I actually think they're probably happy they didn't make the playoffs because now I think you give Messi a prolonged rest and you get him 100% healthy. You tell him, hey, do your media obligations, go do your world tours. We're going to go on a tour with Inter Miami here after the season's over. Reset physically, mentally, come into preseason ready, and we'll go for MLS Cup and every trophy available these next 2 years.
That is if he doesn't go to Barcelona on loan.
In the offseason, is that being talked about?
Yeah, I think you have a better chance of becoming president of the United States than that happening.
Yeah.
There is zero chance that what benefit would that provide Inter Miami? Why would they
exposure?
It's not about Miami.
It is though. It is about Miami. It is about, hey, we are giving you this landmark deal and opportunity. If you want to go back and do appearances in Barcelona and be praised as the god that you are, fine, but we don't want you going on loan. Like, you think they're going to let him go on loan for what? 2 months?
If he wants to go on loan, he will. Bex went on loan when he came over. Henry went back to Arsenal when he came over. Now Messi is going to get. He will put on Barcelona.
It's a long layoff. Are they as Leagues Cup champions? Do they get into any of the earlier starts? Like, do they get into the Champions League?
Champions Cup. The things that I have
they'll
heard,
probably come back in the beginning of January, right?
They are going to be in, guys. They're going to be in preseason very early January, just like all the teams that are going to be in CONCACAF League, CONCACAF Champions Cup.
We had Timmy Parker on last episode, and I was chatting with him after the episode. He said that their report date right now is January 6th. The 6th.
Gordo, I understand Messi, it's a long layoff. I understand he can kind of control and do what he wants to do. There is zero benefit to Inter Miami. Why do you need exposure? Why do you need exposure? Messi going back to play for Barcelona.
Yeah, hold on. Let me jump in.
You're just saying that that's out there.
I'm not arguing that there's any benefits to Miami whatsoever. There's not.
There is. I would say that there is.
Well, in what way?
How many times do you think that in the international market that Leo Messi putting on a jersey for Barcelona will be referred to as an Inter Miami player, and the words Inter Miami will get splashed all over the world continually and be redirected back into Major League Soccer where Messi is currently playing?
And
there's a benefit.
Instead of giving a 36-year-old player who just played 60-plus games this past year.
Listen, that's the sporting side of it. Absolutely.
A long rest. If you send him on loan and he does his ACL, and you lose Leo Messi for a whole year, you will never ever hear the end of that.
Agreed. I completely agree.
Want him to go. I guarantee you. So Dax, if I'm agreeing with you, Miami 100% does not want him to go. They want to arrest him. They want to keep their baby.
Put him in a bubble.
I think if anything, if you want to do like a Messi testimonial game, kind of like what we did with Basti, going over and playing Bayern Munich, I don't see any issue with that.
I'm just saying, and Gargs is right. There's probably some backdoor benefit to Miami. There always is, right? He's gonna be reflective of he's representing Miami essentially, even if he puts it on that. So I agree with that. What I'm saying is, I think that Messi wants to go, and if Messi wants to go play for them, he will. And I just think these guys are so used to playing,
all year round.
And he still probably has a taste. And I know for a fact he wants to have some sort of send off and help Barcelona and put on that jersey again. I think now's the time for him to do it, aside from that lingering injury. But he's still in the mix for the international squad.
Yeah, for Argentina, he hasn't said that he's not participating in the World Cup.
Right.
He's still in the mix for that.
For him to say, I mean, they have World Cup qualifiers like now, and I think they have, what's that South American? It's next year, right?
Copa America. Yeah, it's in the States. It's in the U.S.
Play at a high level.
Yeah, no, I get that. And if Messi says he's going to do something, then
for sure,
it's probably out of their control. But I just don't see any reasonable way for them to structure some loan deal that makes Messi happy, makes Inter Miami happy, and has him back for preseason in January. I don't see how that would be possible. So either you send him on loan and you lose him for 6 months and he can't come back until the summer, or I'm not sure how you structure a loan deal. I just don't see it happening.
Well, you can always put in a recall into a loan deal. That's not a challenge. And if he's going over with the expectation to be back in for the middle of January to be prepped for Champions League, I think that they could structure, and Barcelona would gladly take him.
You have experience with this. When did David Beckham go on loan? And when was he supposed to report back to the Galaxy?
He was supposed to report back for preseason, and he didn't, and that was that big problem. So
gets extended.
So he just basically said, "I'm not coming back."
Yeah.
Well, there was. He essentially
said he did his Achilles on loan.
He did that as well.
He did his Achilles
right when he came back,
Real Madrid, before he came over to the Galaxy.
I think he did his Achilles at Milan.
What I mean, you can see it in the documentary if you watch that. He does it the last game.
So before he comes to LA.
Before he comes to LA,
I thought he had a bad injury when he was on loan. Am I mistaken there?
I can't remember that. He may have hurt his ankle over there because there was.
Yeah, he did that. He hurt his ankle at AC Milan. You're right.
I think
that's
he hurt
right.
His ankle,
and he came back injured.
Real Madrid.
Hey! If anyone knows the dangers about sending an aging superstar on loan, it would be Lionel Messi's owner, David Beckham. All right, so I don't see any world in which Beckham is going to be like, "All right, man, have a good time." Yeah.
It will be. I think it will be interesting to see. You just going back to the original question. I do think that there's a couple things that I would probably, if you're going to twist my arm, agree with both of you that it was considered a success. But you're also talking about success for Leo Messi, and you're talking about success for Tata Martino, which really kind of discredits a massive chunk of Inter Miami's season. We're just throwing that out the window because it was an absolute dumpster fire with Phil Neville and with the roster that they built and all of the changes that they had prior to them. It's tough to say that it's an, what did you call it? An overwhelming success? No, you didn't call it.
Unmitigated success.
Unmitigated success.
Look that up, Gordo. I know it's a big
which is strong.
I think it's mitigated.
A meditative success for Gordo. Here's the other question that I wanted to ask. So you're saying, Dax, that their priorities changed, right? Their priorities changed as soon as they win the Leagues Cup. But from this window that Inter Miami has, do you feel like they are sitting in a place where they can realistically say, hey, we don't need to go for the playoffs this year because of the things that you're just talking about? Because this is an aging superstar, and the guarantee that he's going to make the playoffs or be healthy for it next year is not guaranteed.
Probably not, but the minute that Messi has an injury is the minute that the priorities have to change. And getting him healthy, like, of course, I think they would have wanted to make the playoffs this year. There's no question about it. And I still think, even with Messi's injury and trying to balance, bodies and schedules and whatnot, I still think they put strong teams out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still
think
they
have to, right? They have to do that.
But look, as well as I do that eventually that will catch up to you. And going on the road and playing on the road in MLS, you're always going to run into teams that are going to give you their best. And I look at their game against the Chicago Fire when they went to Soldier Field and they got whooped.
Got their doors blown off.
They got whooped. And guess what? No one, because MLS is such a wild, wacky, crazy league, only the MLS sickos could have probably seen that coming. But I'm certain people that just are following Inter Miami recently would be like, how is Inter Miami with all these superstars going to lose to the Chicago Fire, right? Like, how it is. And so I think it was only a matter of time, especially without Messi, before their magic kind of wore off a little bit. And so, yes, of course, I think they wanted to make the playoffs this year. But now that they have Leagues Cup in their back pocket, they have a trophy, they have CONCACAF Champions Cup to prepare for, I think Tata Martino was like, hey, if we don't make the playoffs, that's fine. My aging superstars get a little bit longer of a rest, and we can make sure that we're full steam ahead for preseason in 2024.
You could very, very well be correct, and I agree with you. Their priorities may have changed, or here's another theory: the two teams that made it all the way to the final in the Leagues Cup, had a little bit of a hangover. Had a little bit of a hangover that we talked about. It's going to be really tough to stay that hot through the rest of the season, right? I know it's a sore subject, and you guys.
Dax. Yeah, let's go in that direction. We can pivot off Miami and talk Nashville because I think, and we haven't heard from you in a little while, and I think that you guys are dealing with a little bit of a hangover or a rougher stretch. Do you point back to the emotional and physical output in Leagues Cup that you guys put forth that has it affected where you're at currently? Do you point back to that?
I think that it would be naive of me to be like, nope, it had no effect on us whatsoever. I think, especially mentally and like emotionally, I think of course
the highs were so high.
They were so high.
They really were.
And I'm not kidding when I say, like, going from game to game, like winning in penalties, like scoring a ton of goals, and like beating Minnesota in convincing fashion, like beating Monterey, like, and just going and doing that every 3-4 days, right? I mean, that was like an emotional roller coaster where you're on top of the mountain for so long, and then once you lose in penalties, the come down, it's steep and it's hard and it's tough. And I thought that, I think we talked about it maybe right after Leagues Cup. We're an experienced group, right? And I didn't think that it would affect us, but I think I probably underestimated how much of an emotional whirlwind that would be, right? Because we have struggled a little bit since in the league, and it's really hard to pinpoint exactly where, like, we're falling short, And I think if you look at it, we're actually falling short, I think, a little bit more so on the attacking side of the field. Because
you guys were also playing out of your minds. Like, you guys were flying in and firing on all cylinders.
We caught a really good vein of form and some amazing confidence, and we rode the wave all the way to the final, right? And so now it's just about us finding that again, and it's not easy to do. Like, I can't speak to have, like, for as long as I've played, I can't speak to having ever been involved in a tournament in the middle of the MLS season where you just start going and flying and playing like so well and like playing at home and having all these emotional moments in front of your home fans in your stadium. Like, I never experienced anything like that before. So I think it's natural for us to have a little bit of a letdown. And I don't necessarily think that we're playing bad. I just think that we have to find that confidence that we had in Leagues Cup, especially in the attacking part of the field, right? Because defensively, I think as a group, the one thing that from Nashville SC is we have everyone bought in to defend and to be hard to play against. And I think we've conceded the least amount of goals in the league. If you want to try to look at some positives, which I always do, we've conceded the least amount of goals in the league for a reason this year. And it's because we continue to put in the work behind the ball. Now it's just a matter of us finding our form again and making sure that when we go and we attack these last two regular season games, we're going to try to score some goals, right? We're pretty much locked into the 7th position. I think we can move up if Atlanta loses and we win both. We can move up to 6th. But like for the most part, like we're out of the, we don't have to worry about the play-in game. So let's let that pressure that I think we're all feeling to score goals, let's just raise that. Like let's lift it and just have fun, right? And just take chances and see what happens. And so, yeah, it's been a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. I think it's affected us a little bit, but I think we're a mature enough team to look at where we're at and say, let's get to the playoffs. Let's score some goals to get our confidence up. And once we're in another knockout situation, we just saw already no more than 3-4 months ago how good we can be in a knockout situation. So I'm confident, man. Like I have no doubt that we're going to figure it out and that we're going to be a really, really difficult out in the playoffs.
I mean, that's good to hear. I think you're also going to see, I was thinking about this. You know what I noticed, Dax? You put up a picture on your Instagram story that was somebody else. I think Grella actually maybe posted it, of a picture of your New York Red Bull team. And it was you, Sasha, Felipe, Grella, who else was in that? BWP. And I was thinking about that team and how good that team was. But you know what? The one thing that it was missing when you guys, I feel like, were really, really good was actual veteran leadership that was on the field. That is the profile of you. And your Nashville team now, I feel like, has the benefit of you and Godoy and Bunbury that are a little bit longer in the tooth, but also that have been there, where your New York Red Bull team didn't quite have that. And you guys were very good in that middle kind of like Walker Zimmerman range, Velvets, Zimmerman, like these guys that you have, but you also now have some veteran leadership that has a different chip on their shoulder.
I think that's a fair assessment, and I think that's the reason why we're not panicking. Like, we know that our form in the league isn't great and that we've struggled to get results, but I don't think this is a situation where anyone is sitting here hitting the panic button. Like, we're not doing that. We're calm,
no, you guys have way too much experience to be hitting the panic button.
We have too much experience, and we have too much quality, and we do have difference makers, and we do have game changers in our team, right? And so I really think that it just takes one good performance, even one good half, right? Where you bang in 2 goals and like you get your strikers firing on all cylinders and creating good chances and the fans behind us. Like, I really believe that, like, we've got two games left. I firmly believe that we should go for it, right? Like, no pressure, try to score some goals and get ready for the playoffs, because I do believe that we do have the confidence and the quality and the experience to really make a deep run. And so, look, you guys know as well as I do that there's a lot of other factors that play into a good deep playoff run. But I think what you're talking about, Dan, is really important because we do have experienced veteran leadership and we do have guys that can get hot at the right time. So I'm excited, man. You guys know, I said this before our Philly game, and I don't know if you guys watched it, but we played Philly to a 0-0 draw. And I talked to Jimmy Curtin after the game. Like, anytime you go into Philly and you can get a point or have a chance to win the game at the end,
it's a good result.
It's a good result, and you should be proud of that. And you know what? We did have moments where we attacked in more ways than one, right? We created chances. We had guys that were close on a few occasions. And so, I talked to Jim Curtin after the game, and you know as well as I do that being tough to play against and giving yourself a chance in the playoffs is
that's a hallmark in this league.
100%. It's a massive part of it. And then look, if your DPs and your big time players can step up in big moments and do what they do and provide you those magical moments and those game changing moments, you're gonna be doing well, and you're probably gonna make a deep run. And so, look, I think that we have all the things that we need. The recipe is there for us. It's just a matter of going and doing it.
Yeah, not to discredit the last 2 games of the regular season, but I also think that you spoke pretty clearly and eloquently about the environment that was at Geodis during Leagues Cup, and you guys can't. That doesn't get replicated in the last 10 games of the Major League Soccer regular season. Let's be honest. So when you do go into a playoff environment, you've clearly shown that you have players that can distribute and also deliver, and to your point, hold down and lock down defensive, score lines and keep clean sheets. And those are all the hallmarks of teams that go deep and make playoff runs. So I'm not betting against Nashville. But you know who is not involved in the playoffs, and I want to chat about another aging superstar is Wayne Rooney and DC United. Parting ways, the announcement from Levian came out, I think 20, 25 minutes after they were technically knocked out of the playoffs, that Wayne had parted ways or mutually agreed to part ways with DC United. I got a question. I want to direct this to you, Dax. And this is just kind of straightforward. Does Wayne Rooney's time in Major League Soccer as a head coach, is it characterized as a success or not?
No. I don't see any way you can characterize it as a success. I mean, their stated goal before the season, and everyone's stated goal before the season, is to make the playoffs, and they didn't. Right? Simple as. And
so how does he get away with, there's a follow-up, I agree with you. Follow-up to that, how does he get away with mutually parting ways and not getting fired?
Because he's Wayne Rooney. Because he's Wayne Rooney.
What'd you say, Gordo?
I was thinking the same thing. Everybody's mutually parting ways these days.
It's why are we shaking hands and see?
I'm glad
I think that it was
thinking about that this week.
I think that the situation specifically regarding Wayne is one that was a little unique in that he's a young coach, right? He came in as a player kind of towards the end of his career and actually was fantastic for them and did great things. And I think his time was cut a little bit short for family reasons, for whatever. And so it always felt like DC and Wayne both felt like it was unfinished business, right? And so I think DC is looking for a spark, right? Yeah. And they're looking at a young coach who has history with them, who they can look at and say, we love how this guy played for us, and we know what his soccer mind is, and we think that he can implement that here. And I think if you ask Wayne to be totally candid about his time in DC, the feeling I get is that kind of same old story with DC United. He probably felt like he was never fully supported, in a sense that there were probably 2 to 3 players that he wanted to go and get, which he probably wasn't given the funds or the resources to go and get, right? I look at Lewis O'Brien. Is that his name? The guy that they got on loan from Nottingham Forest from the Premier League. Great player. Like, I'd never heard of him before. And I was like, wow, when we played against them the first time in DC, I was like, he's the best player on the field. And there's a reason why he's on the books at a Premier League club. And it felt like that first part of the season, they were really going to be onto something if they could keep him, if they could keep some guys healthy. Right. And they lost him, and it just felt like they lost their way a little bit. And it was just kind of a slog through the season. And it always felt a little bit uncomfortable because I feel like Wayne came out with some comments like a month or two ago where he was upset about his contract situation. And
over the All-Star break, I think, and he was coaching the All-Star team.
And anytime you go public and air out a grievance about, I haven't heard from DC, I'm not really sure what my future is, I think that is already a signal that, hey, things aren't really great right now between ownership and between the coaching staff or whatever it may be and Wayne Rooney. And it might be awkward for ownership because Wayne Rooney is such a big name. He has the cachet to be able to go to the media and say, I'm not happy about this situation. Like, I want to know what my future holds. And it's so funny. I mean, we talked about it before we started recording. Wayne comes out after the game, which, by the way, they're in 8th or 9th place. Like, they're above the playoff line, but they had an E next to their name as already being eliminated because the way that the results are going to skew, they're going to be knocked out no matter what. And so it was super awkward. He's like, just so everyone's clear, I'm refuting all reports of me having anything lined up. I'm not going anywhere. The next day, 24 hours later, Fabrizio Romano is like, all right, Wayne Rooney to Birmingham City, Tom Brady, they want to get promoted. It's done deal, done and dusted. And then he's taking pictures with the jersey. I'm like, all right, Wayne, come on.
Already on a plane. All right, Gordo, 53 games. What do you think? Give me Wayne Rooney's record as a manager. 53 games. 53 games with DC. And just give me ballpark numbers because I don't need you to do the quick math.
There's a lot of ties in MLS. I'm gonna go 18.
He's not gonna be able to do the math.
Just get close.
18, 20, and the rest ties.
So 18 wins.
38.
18 wins, 20 losses.
15 ties. 18. Yeah, 18, 28, and 15. Around there. Did I get it? Did I hit it, Jack? Did I hit it?
Dude, you nailed it. Oh, all
right,
well, they played an extra 17 games according to your math, but they 14 wins, 25 losses, and 14 ties.
That's what I said.
We'll run the tape back. I don't think that's what you
18,
said.
24, and 15. I was pretty freaking close.
So what do you think? What do you think about, first of all, let's rewind the tape all the way back. Do you think that it was a good hire from DC to bring Wayne back as a coach?
Well, yes, it was for marketing for marketing purposes.
Uh-huh.
But we went over this. He's no different than Pablo, Ben Olsen, Jason Kreis, and anyone else you throw in there. We had this discussion, right? It's tough even for Wayne Rooney to sit at a locker and then step in the center of the room and talk to the team. It's a learning experience from him, and he's going to look back on this, and he's not going to think it was a success because it was probably difficult for him. Mm-hmm. Because it's difficult for everyone. It's hard to turn from a player to whatever you're doing next. Let alone the hardest thing you could possibly do is be a coach and stand in front of them. If you go into the front office, you don't have to face the players all the time. You can make decisions much easier. From my, I've not done it, but from what I'm thinking. But to stand in front of there, lead them in a different way must be different. And we talked about it, and he's no different. So it was a good hire, I guess. Because
I absolutely love the hire. I love hiring. Right. I love hiring guys outside the box. And you know what? It was kind of like taking a chance on, right, like a Jason Kreis, who's a little bit inexperienced when he got to Salt Lake, right? Or maybe even like a Jimmy Curtin. But this was obviously a much bigger name from across the pond who had different ideas about how to.
Why is it a good hire if he wasn't successful?
I just like the fact I'm arguing that it was a good hire at the time. I like the fact that they took a chance.
Sure.
They took a chance on a guy who, like, you really didn't know what you were going to get. And I like that.
And it's just like, it goes back to, and I remember you saying, Dax, like, nobody should do that. There should be some sort of, right. And so it's just another example.
I think it's an example of it not being successful, but I don't mind DC United taking a risk. DC United has been, let's be honest, DC United hasn't been relevant in terms of results in MLS for a long time. So you hire Wayne Rooney, he gets you to the playoffs, you make a run. Like, I think his name is synonymous with success wherever he's been. And the fact that he wasn't able to get it done is obviously, I think, more of an argument towards what me and Gordo, and we talked about a little earlier, Dan, about how hiring coaches that are inexperienced, regardless of their background or where they come from, is always a little bit tricky. And it's hard to navigate that.
I don't necessarily think that I don't think it's tricky. I think it's pretty straightforward to Gordo's point. Like, you're getting very similar results and similar expectations from really hyper ultra successful players that are novice coaches. I think what has to happen when you hire a young coach or a young careered coach is that you have to give them a longer leash. You have to be okay with the fact that there's going to be mixed results all over the place, and there's going to be emotional baggage that comes along with it, because players want the result on Saturday, and you as a coach, you no longer have control of that. You're not a player. You cannot directly affect the result of the match, and that is really difficult.
Let's also be fair to DC United here. We don't know the other side of the story. Maybe Wayne Rooney was not happy being away from his family because his family's still in England. And maybe he was putting pressure on them to, like, maybe give him a long-term deal. Maybe
sign me a long-term deal.
Sign me long-term so I can bring my family over. And so maybe DC's like...
It was actually mutual?
Maybe. Could be. Maybe. But yeah, Gordo, I agree. There's a lot of mutual parting of ways here. There's a lot of friendly... It's a lot of touch and go here. A lot of friendly fire here.
It's like, just fire the guy.
How about, like, the next like coach that leaves, the team just comes out and is like, he's been fired for on poor results because he was not good.
That's what needs to happen.
It is. I think you're right, Dax. I think it is a little bit of there's a massage that's necessary there because of the profile that Wayne Rooney has in and of himself, and also what he was able to do for his time with DC United as a player. But I do find it kind of interesting, the whole timing of it and where, when he's going and the way that it just all came about. It seemed, I don't know,
awkward.
Awkward. That's a good way to put it.
Seemed awkward.
All right. So I want to hear from both of you. Dax, you're going to have a different vantage point because you're lining up against these guys. Let's take Nashville off the table. actually, you know what? Just give me your Western Conference. Which teams in the Western Conference heading into the playoffs do you feel like are the strongest? Gordo, I'll give you the Eastern Conference.
Okay.
I had pick in my draft. With Dax, I picked one team.
Oh,
dude, wait till you see
Thanks,
this
buddy.
draft.
I appreciate it. I can't wait to see it, by the way. This draft episode should be fun with Chris Wingert.
Definitely not you, Dax. Just a spoiler alert.
You know what? That's fine. We're used to being the underdog. I might be a victim of recency bias here, and I think I probably am. But I'm telling you what, man. If Seattle gets healthy and if they get Rui Diaz back, they are going to be a tough out in the playoffs.
And is that because of the team or is it because of the stadium?
It's because of the team. What would the stadium have anything?
The environment. Like not every environment is created equal.
Of course, the environment is fantastic, but I'm telling you guys right now, man, Seattle. I think we can all agree they've had a little bit of an underwhelming season for the expectations that they have. We played them. They are getting Christian Roldan back. It was huge for them. I think he's just such a great player for what they're trying to accomplish, and everything that he does is kind of like a Swiss Army knife defensive winger who can also give you goals and assists. Like tactically, he is so good and so sound with the position that he plays. And then you add in the fact that they have the second best defense in MLS behind us. They've conceded the second least amount of goals. And when I say they were the hardest team that we played against and the most organized team that we played against at Geodis, they made our lives miserable. And I just think if they're going to be sound defensively and they get Christian back and they get Rui Diaz healthy, which is a big question mark because Rui Diaz Christian is going to be all right. I think Rui Diaz hasn't really been fit. So I don't know about him, but I also look at what I think is going to happen is I think this is Ladero's last season. I don't know how anyone can look at the images of him in the last home game crying with his kid crying, which was really sad and emotional, and say that he's going to be back next year. At least that's how I interpret it. Yeah. And I think that this guy still has some magic left in him. And if you get a motivated Ladero, and if you get Rui Diaz back and hot at the right time, I just don't see, especially with the wobble that LAFC has had. And St. Louis, St. Louis, I think is a good team, but I think that Seattle, with the experience they have, the know-how that they have, I see them still being the strongest team in the West, and that's just from playing against them recently.
That's saying something because what LAFC and Boanga, don't they have 5 goals in their last 2 games?
Sure, but guess what?
Does. He does, right? And he does. Yeah, he, right? He is they right now.
He is they.
He is they. I think that, I don't know, man. Seattle, for me, just from playing them recently, I just think that they have something special about them. And you know what? Shout out to Houston because they're doing some fun stuff, and
they're the hottest. They're the hottest team in the Western Conference right now. They may not be the strongest, but they're the hottest.
I agree with that, and I think that winning the Open Cup will do them nothing but good. And even if they have to go on the road, they showed in the Open Cup final, because I think Houston really struggled on the road. Either was it this year or last year, the last couple years, they've been terrible on the road. They went into Inter Miami in a final and played them off the pitch, right? And completely dominated. And of course, Inter Miami didn't have Messi, but I'm just saying from what I saw from them and what I see from the confidence that Ben has given these players and the level that Hector Herrera is playing at, and Carrasquilla and the options they have going forward, man, they're a fun team to watch. I enjoy watching Houston play. And so I think Houston, Seattle, I think if you want, some of my favorites to come out of the West, I like those two.
Houston, Seattle. Gordo, I'll throw, before I throw it to you, there's decision day and maybe a handful of MLS games next Wednesday, right? That are still, not everyone's on 32 games.
No, there's only 2 or 3 games this weekend because it's the international break.
Right, because the international break.
Our game, we're just making it up for New England. We were supposed to play New England, but we made it to League's Cup final, so they had to reschedule it.
So it got moved to this weekend because it's an international break.
Everyone else plays on decision day. And then there's one other game, I think.
St. Louis and LAFC, you got to throw them in the mix from my vantage point, but there's not a ton of sampling left to do to get yourself sorted before we head into the first round of the playoffs. Gordo, I know you're heavy Western Conference based on your draft. So Dax, we all got 6 picks. Gordo went 5 in the Western Conference that all play each other in the first round. It was brilliant.
Well, we've already established on this pod that there's a lot of hair gel that has seeped into that brain. It doesn't always function properly.
I'm gonna get one team in the final.
You are, yeah. You could.
You sure could.
Lock down one side.
Unfortunately, the final isn't weighted to win the entire draft, but that's okay. Who do you got on the Eastern Conference? I think there's a lot of good picks right now.
Yeah, if I was going to say who's coming in hot, I would probably say Orlando. I think Orlando's hot. I also think that Cincinnati is still strong. So I think that Cincinnati, from what I've seen from them, they're a dangerous team, and they've been all season, and they're going to be really tough to beat. I think Orlando. I watched their game this last weekend, or a portion of it,
against New England.
Against New England, and they just look like an Oscar Pereja team, and he's gonna get them working. They're fighting for each other. They got some athletes out there that can push the pace, and then and they've climbed. So I think they're hot. I mean, Philadelphia, you can go down. Columbus, I watched them. I think Columbus and their style is like, it's pretty. I'm not sure how dangerous it is. Like everybody's free flowing, and it's very, it's pretty to watch. It's just everybody's. It's total.
I love it, man. I love watching Columbus play.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
There's a lot of validity behind what you're saying, Gordo. Like, does it have enough grit and teeth behind it to win a championship?
Playoffs, right?
Yeah.
I enjoyed. I was like, wow, he's playing here, and then he's going here, and then they're everywhere, right? It's cool. But the teeth of the playoffs and everything that Dax said about Seattle, which I completely agree. I don't know if they have that. I don't know that because if you're free flowing offensively, how organized can you be defensively? Right? Yeah. Does that kind of make sense when the ball turns over? So
you gotta find that balance.
Yeah, you gotta find a balance. So I'm gonna say Orlando and Cincinnati.
So so Gordo's going 1-2 in the East. Shocker. Good.
Good. Whoa. Hey, I don't know if you've heard, but Lionel Messi is the best player in the world.
Newsflash. I mean,
dude, I think they're both. I mean, that's a fair assessment. The only thing
I think the East has more quality teams, more high quality teams, top to bottom.
It does. The only thing that I probably didn't give enough credit to, which I missed in our draft, was probably acknowledging the experience and playoff mettle that Philadelphia has at this moment. They are going into the playoffs. They're still a very good team. They have all the pieces, and they have a chip on their shoulder. And by the way, they're not being picked, which is a great thing for any Philadelphia team to have in their back pocket. And
same with Seattle. I was going to say that too.
Same with Seattle, right? Jim Curtin, right? Jim Curtin, to put Jim Curtin and the Philadelphia Union, who have been probably the most successful team over the past couple of years, bar trophies, to say that they're not a high pick or a favored pick to win MLS Cup it almost feels like a dangerous proposition. Like you're kind of just missing. And I didn't really consider that going into it, but I do. Upon revisionist history, being a Monday morning quarterback here, I think that was something that I missed going into the draft that I'd be comfortable betting on now going into the playoffs.
Okay, so Dax just roasts me for picking 1-2. And we're not going to roast the guy that's wearing a Philadelphia hat and picking Philadelphia.
Well, I mean, if Bryce Harper has told us anything, you better be careful who you're going to talk shit to, Gordo, because I'm coming after you.
You better hope Bryce Harper gets on the field for the Union.
I'm staring you down if you're not picking that up right now. All right, so let's finish up. I want to ask you 2 questions, and I want one-word answers. Bigger disappointment this year, Austin FC or LA Galaxy? Dax, you're up first.
I'm going to say LA Galaxy.
Gordo?
LA Galaxy.
And
okay.
I have to say, I would thank you for bringing this up, Dan. There needs to be an acknowledgement, and I need to be able to show my humility here, saying I got it completely wrong because I was waxing poetic about how they're gonna figure it out and they're gonna make the playoffs and they should stick with Vanny and their midfield's excellent. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
I was wrong.
you were.
Hand up. I was wrong. I'll take it. But Gordo was wrong too. And I will say they were, and I know that every team wants to use this excuse. They had so many devastating season-ending injuries that I think it was always going to be really hard for them to come back from. It was Chicharito, it was Brugman, it was I think two center backs, Cáceres and one other one, maybe I'm forgetting. I just, dude, when you have that many good, important, influential players go down, I don't see how they were ever going to be able to crawl out of that hole.
All right. Gordo, you got the Galaxy too? One word answer?
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
There was less expectation.
I expected Austin to regress to what their like underlying numbers kind of said last year. It said that like their underlying numbers, they were outperforming their underlying numbers by like a crazy like amount. Like expected goals. Driussi was like on fire. Like like just insane. And I think everything was going and falling their way. And I always felt like they were going to regress a little bit. Now, I expected them to be in the playoffs because I still rate their talent and I rate Josh Wolf as a head coach. But for me, it was the Galaxy for sure. Much bigger.
Hey, you think Josh Wolf's job is on the line?
No, they just came out yesterday. And said it's not. All right, so that's the follow-up question here. So Austin, 65 points last year, 38 points this year. That is a significant regression. And I know that they obviously had the Claudio Reyna issue at the beginning of the season. That's a tough way to start. Yep. And then you also have the disaster that was their back line, all the injuries with their center backs. They couldn't figure it out. They had a tough stretch as well.
Yep.
You got to bet on one for next year to have a better spot in the table. Are you betting on the Galaxy or are you betting on Austin?
Well, is the Galaxy keeping Vanny in this hypothetical?
Yes.
I don't foresee them getting rid of Vanny.
Vanny will be there.
I honestly, listen, and I have a personal relationship with Vanny, and I would never, but wasn't the message, and I know Chris Klein put it out, but Vanny backed this up. Wasn't the message, we are going to make it in the playoffs or do what you want?
I think that was
for Chris Klein.
Yeah,
I know. All right, it was Klein, but
I don't think Vanny was involved.
I have an expectation for Vanny too. Okay, and it didn't end well. And yes, they have their injuries or whatever. I know that wasn't your question.
Who you betting on?
Not the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Gordo's taking Austin. I'll take the Galaxy. I just think, dude, Ricky Puig, and I think they have Chicharito out of contract, and I think they have Douglas Costa out of contract. You have two.
So you pick up two DPs.
You have two open DP spots, and another year of Vanny, which I think Greg is a good coach, even though the results this year have not gone their way. I just think Ricky Puig is such a special player. If you can just sign a great striker, and it's the Galaxy. Like, let's forget about Inter Miami for a second. Let's forget about LAFC for a second. You're still talking about the LA Galaxy. They are willing to spend money, and they're still in LA last time I checked.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ricky Puig is easily a top 3 to 5 player in this league. That's in my humble opinion.
High. That's high. I think he's very, very good.
I've watched. My son.
This guy is an elite midfielder. Elite.
Yeah. Okay. So that's fair. A top 3 is high. That's saying a lot.
If you get Brugman back healthy and you get Marky Delgado back, okay. If you get your back line sorted out even a little bit, they have to
sort out every position in the back line, Dax.
Yeah,
every
they do.
Single one. Every single position.
Agreed.
Plus, you have to get the striker right, which is not easy.
Plus, you have to get the DPs plural right.
Right.
Listen,
there's a lot to get right.
There's a lot to get right.
Hey, let me. Well, okay, let's go a little further then, just for 1 second. Will Kuntz, who was at LAFC and now has gone over to the Galaxy, director of player personnel, GM, whatever you want to call him.
Yep.
I have faith in this guy. Look at what he was able to accomplish with John Thorrington in LA. So I look at his history, where he's been, and the vision that they have, and the fact that I think it's been now, 2 years in a row? Actually, they made the playoffs last year. But underwhelming, right? They still haven't been great. So I just look at a team like LA. You guys have talked about it a lot, representing that crest, playing for that club. The results this year are not good enough, and I think that they're going to make changes. I think Austin will too, but I just think that I would bet more on LA having a bigger rebound season than Austin.
I don't think Austin has as many changes to make, and I also don't think that Austin has as much pressure on it to perform as the Galaxy does. Galaxy, you already have a lot of pressure wearing that crest, and they're entering next year with targets on everybody's back. Everybody in that front office, everybody on the coaching staff, and every player. And that's a different feeling for the Galaxy. I don't think that they've really ever had a ton of like uncomfortable pressure placed on them. They have high expectations on them, but not the way that they're entering this offseason. I think this is a different feeling in LA for the Galaxy. Sure. I think that if I had to pick one, I'm probably going to say that Austin finishes higher in the table. I do think that the Galaxy will get something right, but I think it's going to be tougher than maybe you're making it out to be.
Maybe could be, but it's a huge,
it's hard to know.
It's a huge season for Greg, make or break. I mean, all the success he had in Toronto, I think, look, at the end of the day, he'll always have that, but people start to forget about that after a while. You know, he's been in LA for a good amount of time now.
Guess what happened in Toronto? They got their DPs right.
Yeah.
True. For Vanny. We're not talking current right now, right?
Yeah. No. For
Vanny. They did get their DPs right.
Yeah.
You're right
and
about
then
that.
And then they mutually parted ways.
They sure did.
All right, boys, that's it for today. That is it for this episode. You both were excellent. I will give you a stamp of approval from Daniel Gargan and the rest of the Journeymen. Well done. Thanks for tuning in. We will check in with you relatively soon. Good luck this weekend, Dax.
Thanks, guys.